ago, my sister and brother-in-law arrived with boxes of photos and packages of documents of all these ancestry that goes back through a number of years, and all these old pictures of people, some not labeled, and it's really fascinating. And they linked me to the Ancestry.com and all of ways following. I find it very fascinating. And one of the documents that came my way was, and we all like to be connected to people that are of note in the past. Well, one of my ancestors, apparently around the turn of the last century, had commissioned somebody in Wales. The Jenks have come from Wales. And they traced, apparently, for this man who probably paid him to do it, the Jenks line all the way back before Jesus. And I find it rather entertaining that I'm sure the man took his money and said, oh, well, yeah, I'll trace you back all right. But it made him feel good, and it's been passed down, apparently, through the ages, that this is a great noble line, apparently. We like to know where we've come from and if we're connected to somebody of note, but sometimes we hold on to those people or the things from the past as if it defines us. If my father or my grandfather served in the military, it does not make me more patriotic. It just means that I probably have more of an understanding of the cost of what it is to serve and how important it is to serve. I have to do my own time. Or if somebody has some very profound experience of faith, well, likewise, because somebody was a saint in the past does not mean that I carry the coattails and it goes and passes from generation to generation. We each, in our own time, need to find our own call, our own connection with the divine. It's important. This is what Abram, the whole passages are about. That here Abram had this experience, a call, a sense that he was going to have a child. He didn't see how it was possible. It was somehow, he only had this child through his slave, and this isn't going to work. But God said, this is my promise. Go with this. And Abraham said, okay. And the story continued. Well, God has given each one of us a promise. Each one of us has a way, a place, a calling, some way in which we fit into the world, in which our relationships make sense. I have a number of years ago, it was almost against my will, but I've just discovered how blessed it was to be called to serve in this place, in this region. I had a sense of it years before, and when I came here and arrived, this is where God has called me to be. To somehow serve God in this area. This area, though, what it was 30 years ago is very different than what it is now. The grown men sitting in the second pew were the ages of the little children in the first pew. But it is a way in which not only is people have changed, there's no prison anymore in the town. I mean, there's a lot of different, the demographics have changed. There's no high school in town. Things have evolved and changed within our community. When I came here, the churches were seen in a very different light. At the beginning of a town meeting, I would be asked to offer a prayer or moderate a town meeting, that this as a clergy person would do such a thing. Now recently, when the town did a survey of what to do with the town and the future of the community, they did a years-long process. Never once did they even talk to or think that the churches existed. It's just a different world, and in so many levels, we've changed. Now, that's not bad and it's not good. It's changed. My body over the last 30 years has changed. It's not bad or good. I just need to learn to live with new restrictions and new blessings of different ways. What I can and cannot eat or do is just the way it goes. There is that adapting that we need to find. And there are ways in which we need to adapt. Our community as a church here in the community is learning and finding ways to continually adapt. 30 years ago was a very different dynamic within this congregation. I kind of viewed it as this, everything is just going and all sorts of dynamic and people doing all sorts of different things. the youth choir starting up, all these different events were happening. I kind of equated it to a big ship sailing in the open sea. I just had to kind of get on deck and say, keep going. And that's how it went. Well, it's more like at this point in this new generation we've come to, it's more like coming into Penobscot Bay. There are a lot of islands. There are a lot of reefs. There's a lot of places where you need to be very careful. And having a ship that was crossing the ocean in a very small area and up in the rivers, we need to pay different attention and be more adaptable. We're still sailing. It's still the wind. We're still moving in the direction that God is calling us. We're in the midst of all of this, remembering and looking back to what is the call in your life? What is the promise that God has given you? Where is it in your life that there has been forgiveness? The place in which you have been hurt or wounds, and either you've been allowed to let that go or that you have felt the power of forgiveness, the transformation. Where and how, and the power of the mystery of God that takes the everyday chores and occupations and somehow twists it into something that is sacred. One of the ministries that is most unheralded here at St. John's that I savor so dearly, and that is the Altar Guild. It is a group that is so quietly does things and you don't really hear about them, but they take an ordinary Sunday, and between these last two Sundays, last week and this, it makes an ordinary event when you see flowers like that. This is sacred. And you walk into a room and the beauty is there before you. There's something special about this. Reminding us where is that place in our life that calls us into realizing we are in a sacred time. It is a limited time, but this is the opportunity in which we are molding what we do. I am here because of others who have led the way for me. I'm here as a pastor here because of Bill Kennison and Father Brown and all these other people before me. I'm here because of the faith of others, the care that my parents gave me, and so many others. But now, what am I leaving to others? What is it that I am carrying into this world? I'm in the midst of all sorts of islands and different reefs that are there, causing me and leading me to be very careful not to add to the divisions of our world, not to add to the tensions and anxieties, but how is it we are called to offer our heart in a way that, yes, my life has been transformed. My life has been touched by grace. My life has found forgiveness and healing, and how am I opening my life into this world in a way that is not determined by the winds of change and challenges that are emerging, but rather keep myself focused on the wind and the sails and that grace of God's love. We've all been called. We've all been brought to a place that realize that we are standing on sacred ground. Anyone who is visiting or living in Maine and you live here every day and you think this is ordinary, this is an unbelievably sacred, beautiful place. I used to live in Virginia and I loved it and the people there, but I would go down the road and it was one strip mall after another, after another, after another, after another, after another. This really is beautiful. We really are in an amazing time. We are so extraordinarily blessed. God has set the stage for us. What is your call? The stage lights of our life have been lit. The wind is blowing, the sails are up, and now where is it God is sending you? What is it that your role that you have been called to speak forth and share, whether it be so subtle, of holding a child, or sharing with a friend, or simply taking time to care for yourself. Having that still, small time of voice where we find ourselves renewed again. What is it that leads you to sing? What is it the song God has called you to sing? And are you singing? this is what we're called to remember as we begin the next 30 years together. Amen.